you apply that with thick paint. So you can tap on a little heavier white paint up here at the top of those falls. And then just work it together till you like what you get. Let's see. I could zoom this in just a tiny bit more, and that might help. Okay. And I can pull some water lines back here. Heavy paint. Some people like to do this with a palette knife. I don't generally, but you could do it with a palette knife. Okay. So now we have water lines back there. And we need water lines down here too. But I like to start those with blue or green and white. Like right here I've got, it almost looks like it's a dead pond right there or something. And you could pick up green with your blue. You know, here's some greenish water lines going in there. Nobody said they have to be white. And if they're in the shadows, they really aren't going to be bright white. So as they come forward, I like for them to get a little bit darker. So sometimes doing this with green and blue and so forth really looks pretty. I'm painting mine a little bit darker so that hopefully you can see that. Okay. If you get one a little darker than you want, just blend it into your wet background. That's the nice thing about using the retarder or extender in your background, is that it stays wet and you can blend. Yeah, I do water exactly the same way for oils. Now, one thing I do see a lot with students sometimes and painters is that when you may do chisel edge here and you may do that nice and horizontal, but as you get up here and there's a curve, you have a tendency to pull your brush this way. Well, if you do that, your water's going to look like it's standing up in the air. So you don't want to do that. All this water is going to have to be horizontal. Okay? So you can get whatever colors that you want in there. If it's in your sky, if it's on your trees, it could be in your water. Okay? Now we got to do something with this edge along here. I could make it look like ground, like there's a bank there. If I pick up a little burnt umber on my brush, and I came back here and just came out like this along the sides, kind of jiggling it along. Again, it comes out, it's got to come out horizontal, work it back into my ground. Okay, then I can use this and this bank that I'm putting in here. And I can use that and put more grass, flowers, whatever that I want on it. But I gotta have something there. If you pull a bank out, okay, like right here, let's say there was a bank that I pulled out right there. Well, I'm gonna take and I'm gonna pull some of that color down in my water. Okay, then I'll wipe the brush out and blend that in my water. Boy, that's what I really must have used a lot more extender than I meant to. Okay, so very lightly, I'll have to do it very lightly. No pressure. Okay, that did it. And you can blend that into your water so that's a reflection of your rocks. Okay. Now, I really should let this dry a little bit or dry it. Let's dry it with a hair dryer. just real quickly. That's good enough. Okay. Now I can also take some white on my brush and come around under that rock that I just put in there, so it looks like the water is coming up over the rock or over that bank at the bottom of it, and that breaks up that shadow a little bit, and I don't have just plain old brown. That's what I needed, just a little bit of drying there. Okay, so you just keep working this back and forth until you get it the way you like it. Okay, but that's how you do that. Now, I could turn some of those into rocks too. You can have rocks along there. We have this bank over here that we need to do something with. I'm going to take burnt umber and a little bit of the background blue, maybe a touch of alizarin crimson. Anyway, I want something dark, a little bit lighter than my bank. And I can pull something that looks like highlights in the ground a little bit down over here. Okay. Maybe it's coming out this way too. So I'm just getting some highlights in there. And again, you can have rocks or whatever. Let's get some of that dark shadow in that water too. Okay, lay it in vertically, blend it horizontally. Okay. So there we have a little bit of reflection of our trees and banks and whatever there. Okay. Let's hit a little bit on highlighting, and also you could pull burnt umber and black. Once you get this highlighted down here the way you want it, you can pull some roots coming out of that tree into the water. I bring that always gives people something that they really seem to like. Okay, I'm laying that in kind of light so you can see it. This is so dark down here, it's just, I can see it, but I'm not sure you can. Anyway, they come off kind of like a limb in that they're thicker at the top, and then they kind of get smaller as they come down, and they can reach the water if you want them to. Wherever you stop and start, you blend it into your tree, something like that. Okay, so you can do that to add interest down here. We have to do something to add interest to our painting, and so this is something that you could do. Now, don't get carried away. You can get too much of this in here, and then it looks really strange. Okay. So that gets all blended back into your tree. Okay. Use your finger if you need to do a little blending. It doesn't matter what you use as long as the outcome is good. Okay. Now, when you're doing this bark, and your highlight on this tree will be over here on this side. Here's our sun. Remember, our sun's coming in here. So it's going to come this way, out here, highlight these. So there's a couple ways you can do bark. Now, on this little bitty tree, I'm not going to double load my brush, but I will show you how to do it. Okay. If you want to double load to do the bark, you lay You pick up your paint. Let's say we do burnt umber and maybe a little touch of black. Okay, burnt umber and black. I'm going to turn it over and look for a spot on my palette, which I don't have. Okay, so I'm going to pick up a little orange and white on one side of my brush. Generally what I like to have, and I'll just, let me mix up something here. Let me get some yellow and some orange and put it here. Smear it. Usually my palette's such a mess that this is not a problem. Okay, so you load one side of your brush, flat side of your brush, with thin burnt umber and black, and you turn the brush over and you run it through your highlight color, but you don't thin that color. Okay, so now I've got orangey white on one side and I have my dark on the other. So if you want to do bark, you can lay your dark side to the dark part of your tree, the orange towards your sunlight, and you can combine to do these little downward strokes, and you'll have both light and dark coming out. And I only usually do this on a big tree with a double loading. On a small tree, I would generally use my liner brush. But can you, hopefully you can see, I am getting both dark and light to bark this tree, and it works really well. Now, when I'm done with that much, I might pick up something a little bit lighter and lay that in. And again, if I want a double load, I can. And then I'm setting in the brown and the black highlight color at the same time. You can do fence posts that way. If you have your brush loaded the same way, okay, you can sit down here and look at that fence post. It's got its dark, and whoops, I'm sorry. It's got its dark and its light at the same time. So double loading like that can save you a lot of time sometimes. Okay. Now we'll work on this little tree over here on the side. Okay, I already started a little bit, and the color that I'm using is the color I like to use most often is orange and a little yellow or red. Sometimes I use red and white, and it's kind of a peachy tone. Now you don't want to get it pastel. It has to have color in it. Okay, and then you hold your brush straight up and down on the tip of that brush, and you just chop, leaving some dark in between the color. I'm going to see if I can get that in a little bit more so you can see it. Oh, that may be out of focus now. Oh, okay. Okay. So, short downward strokes with a highlight color facing the sun, and the dark on the other side. And you're just chopping in your highlights. I'm getting this a little brighter than I normally do at this point because I like to work it up to this brighter orange. But I have to make it so you can see it. Okay. Pull a highlight there. You can have a highlight on the top of this little branch as it goes out. Okay. And you just highlight your whole tree. Now, sometimes you've made your tree too brown, okay? And if you look at trees, they're really mostly black. They're not, or black and brown. There's not too much that are brown trees. If that's the case, shade the back of your tree with a little black, so that you have a light side to your tree and kind of a dark side also. So away from the sun would be your dark side. You got a branch coming over that tree trunk, so I'm going to highlight it so it shows up a little bit. Hopefully you can see that. I'm going to pick up a little more yellow and maybe even a touch more white and get this a little brighter. And I'll do this side again, only just a touch brighter, where I think the sun would be shining on it. Little short downward strokes. Be sure you leave the brown in there between some of the bark, because you want to be able to see this. So now I've got kind of a medium shade of bark through the center, a little bit lighter out here. Okay, little short downward strokes. And we know how to do little short downward strokes because we did it in our grass, right? Okay. Now, on the back side of our tree, a lot of times I will take ultra blue deep and background color, if it's blue, a light blue. And I will come down the back side of the tree with blue. And I don't go over too much as far as in the middle of the tree. This should be right here along the back. And that's reflected color that's coming down here. Helps to round out the tree. Oh, another color that's real pretty. I'll take that alizarin black. Now, you don't want to do this on the same tree probably, but although I do have a really pretty painting that I do have it on both sides, but I have both purple and blue in it. But this purple, if I can get it light enough for you to see it, let me get some more white in it, and maybe you can see it. You see, you could use, instead of the blue, you could use the purple. Here, I could put it on this one. And that makes a really pretty high backlit part of the tree. Okay, so you could use purple and you could use blue. We have both of those colors in our sky, so we could put more of it down in here too. Okay, so that's just some suggestions for you of how to do those. Now, as far as leaves on our tree, I am going to probably today use a fan brush because I think it'll be a little quicker. And I'm going to pick up ultra blue deep on one side of my fan brush. See that? Okay. And I'm going to pick up some brown and plantation pine. I'm making a really, really dark blue. Okay. Now let's just say I was going to put leaves on this tree. Okay. This can come right off the top. I don't want to cover up everything I've got back here in my background. But I'm on the corner of the brush, you can see that. And I'm laying out, this is my shadow in my tree. Make sure you leave plenty of sky holes. Gotta let those little birds fly in and make a nest in our tree. Okay, now I'm not gonna do much more than that. It could have a lot more. Come right across the trunk, I'm sorry. Okay, now you need a filbert brush, and I usually use a 4 or a 6 filbert for this, and we're going to lay our leaves on with a filbert. Uh-oh. Man, I don't have much room in here, and it's easy for me to knock the camera off or drop something. Okay. All right. I'm going to pick up evergreen, a touch of yellow, and I'm going to make a green. And I'm going to take my brush and I'm going to go in on the tip of the brush. Tip, see that? And the harder I push, the bigger the leaf. The least amount of pressure that I have on it, the tinier the leaves are. So I'm going to go out here on the outside edge and I'm going to highlight some of these. Now our light's really coming in from that side, so I should have some light colored leaves over here. So evergreen and yellow. Let's put some over here. You're going straight in, right on the tip of that brush. You might want to lay it on the side. I do that a lot. Because if I lay it on the side, see, if I go straight in, this is what I get. Okay? If I go on the side, I get a little bit bigger one and a little bit rougher looking edge to them. Okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to take your yellow and your green and you're going to make this kind of middle value green. Up on the tip, this tree is close to us, so they're going to be a lot bigger leaves than what we have back here in the background. Okay, now I don't want to get rid of our two trees right there, so I'm going to try to avoid them a little bit. Okay, so you do that shade of green. Okay, I'm not going to do this whole tree because I want to bark it and there's a lot of, detail that needs to be put in there.